The training habitat dome stretched 3 kilometers in every direction, filled with artificial jungle that looked and smelled exactly like the death worlds most species tried to avoid. Instructor Vren watched his students through the observation window, his forearms crossed in a way that meant he was either thinking hard or getting ready to fail someone. Probably both. 20 cadets sat in the briefing room representing 12 different species from across the galaxy. Most of them had claws, fangs, armored skin, or enhanced senses that evolution spent millions of years perfecting. Then there was Daniel Brooks, who looked like he would lose a fight with a strong breeze. Vren's voice cut through the nervous chatter. Your final examination begins today. Each of you will enter the habitat alone and neutralize one Ravager beast. The creature must be captured or subdued without killing it. You have 6 hours. Failure means repeating the entire semester. A Turok named Grath flexed his massive arms. His species had natural armor plating that could stop most weapons. Finally, a real challenge. My people have hunted worse things for sport. Quick Claw, a Selvani with razor-sharp natural blades along her forearms, hissed in agreement. Speed and precision. The beast will not even see me coming. Daniel said nothing. He checked his equipment carefully, making sure every strap was secure and every tool was within easy reach. The other students had been watching him for weeks, waiting for him to quit or fail. Humans were new to the Galactic Academy, and most species still thought of them as the kind of creatures you protected, not the kind you trained for combat. Vren explained the rules in detail. Standard equipment included a stunner rifle, tracking sensors, protective armor, and emergency beacons. The Ravager was a bioengineered predator used across the galaxy for security work and dangerous hunts. It had enhanced senses, natural weapons, and enough intelligence to set ambushes. The creature learns from each encounter, Vren continued. It will be more dangerous for each student who faces it. Choose your order wisely, Grath volunteered immediately. His confidence filled the room like bad cologne. I will show you how Turok warriors handle predators. 3 hours later, Grath limped back through the habitat entrance with deep claw marks across his armor, and his pride shattered into small pieces. The Ravager had waited in ambush, using the jungle terrain to avoid Grath's strength advantage. He never even got close enough to use his stunner. Quick Claw went next, certain her speed would succeed where strength had failed. She returned in 2 hours, bleeding from multiple lacerations and empty-handed. The Ravager had matched her speed and fought with a fury that shocked everyone watching. 5 more students tried. 5 more students failed. The observation room grew quieter with each failure. The Ravager was learning, adapting, becoming more aggressive with each encounter. Daniel sat in the back, watching every attempt on the monitor screens. He took notes in a small waterproof notebook, the kind that didn't rely on technology that could fail. While other students bragged or complained, he studied patterns. The Ravager's behavior, its preferred ambush points, the way it reacted to different approaches. It's defending territory, Daniel said quietly, more to himself than anyone else. Vren's hearing was excellent. Explain, Cadet Brooks. The students are invading its space. The Ravager thinks it's protecting its home. That's why it's getting more aggressive. It's not hunting them, it's driving them away. Several students laughed. A Dreth named Sharpsense, whose species had hearing that could detect heartbeats from 50 meters away, shook his head. The human thinks the monster has feelings. How adorable, Vren didn't laugh. His 4 eyes focused on Daniel with new interest. You believe this changes the approach needed? Yes, sir. If it's territorial defense, going in aggressive just confirms you're a threat. You have to speak a different language, and what language is that? Daniel stood up and gathered his gear. I'll show you. I'm ready for my attempt. The other students whispered among themselves. Some placed bets on how quickly the human would fail. Others wondered if he would even survive. Vren studied Daniel for a long moment. The human looked calm, almost relaxed. No bravado, no fear displays, just quiet focus. The Ravager is highly agitated now, Cadet Brooks. 7 students have entered its territory today. It will be extremely dangerous, I understand, sir. Do you require additional equipment? Daniel looked at the standard loadout one more time. Stunner rifle, tracking sensors, armor plating, emergency beacon. He made a decision that caused several gasps in the observation room. He removed 2 of the chest armor plates, setting them aside. The armor made noise when you moved, and noise meant the Ravager would hear you coming from a kilometer away. That is unwise, Vren said carefully. Maybe, but I won't need it if this works. And if it doesn't work? Daniel smiled slightly. It wasn't the confident smile of someone who thought they couldn't fail. It was the quiet smile of someone who had done dangerous things before and survived by being smart instead of strong. Then I'll use my emergency beacon and accept the failure, sir. But I think I know something about this situation that everyone else missed. Vren gave permission with a gesture of his upper right arm. The habitat door opened with a hiss of equalizing pressure. The artificial jungle waited beyond, hot and humid and full of places for a predator to hide. Daniel stepped through the entrance and immediately moved to the side, out of the obvious path. He knelt down and pressed his hand against the soil, feeling the texture and moisture. Then he did something that made absolutely no sense to anyone watching. He reached into his pack, pulled out a small container of dirt and local plant matter he had collected from the academy grounds during his free time, and rubbed it over his arms, neck, and clothing, masking his scent, the way hunters back on Earth did when tracking dangerous animals. Grath's voice came through the observation room speakers. What is the human doing? Is he performing some kind of ritual? Vren's mandibles clicked together softly, the Kalathi equivalent of a thoughtful hum. No, he is hunting. Watch carefully. I believe we are about to learn something new. Daniel moved into the jungle, each step deliberate and measured. He avoided the trails that other students had used. Instead, he picked his way through the thicker vegetation, moving slowly enough that his passage barely disturbed the plants around him. Behind him, the entrance sealed shut. Ahead of him, somewhere in 3 kilometers of artificial wilderness, a very angry predator waited. The exam had begun. 20 minutes passed before Daniel moved more than 50 meters into the habitat. Any other student would have charged ahead, trying to find the ravager quickly and end the exam. Daniel moved like someone who understood that rushing toward a predator was a good way to become prey. He stopped every few steps to listen and observe. The jungle was full of recorded sounds, bird calls, and insect noises that made it feel alive. But Daniel wasn't listening to those. He was listening for the sounds that didn't belong, the spaces where the artificial animals went quiet because something dangerous had passed through. There, about 200 meters to his left, a section of the jungle had gone silent. Daniel changed direction, angling away from the quiet zone instead of toward it. The ravager was territorial, and territorial predators patrolled their boundaries. If he followed the edge of the silence, he would find where the creature had passed. Back in the observation room, Academy Administrator Pellis had joined Vren. The administrator's species communicated partly through color changes in their skin, and right now Pellis was showing deep purple confusion. Why is the human moving away from the predator's location? Pellis asked. He is tracking, Vren replied. Watch. Daniel found what he was looking for after another 10 minutes of careful movement. Claw marks on a tree trunk, exactly the right height and depth. Fresh sap still oozed from the cuts. The ravager had marked this tree within the last hour, claiming territory. But there was something else. Daniel knelt down and examined the marks more carefully. One of the claw cuts was different from the others, slightly angled and less deep. He pulled out a small sample kit from his pack and carefully collected a tiny amount of the fluid from that particular mark. His portable scanner analyzed it quickly. Blood mixed with the sap, along with markers indicating infection. One of the ravager's claws was damaged, probably from its fight with Quick Claw. The injury would make the creature even more defensive and dangerous. It's hurt, Daniel said softly to himself. That changes everything. He left the stunner rifle strapped to his pack. If the ravager was injured and scared, seeing a weapon would only make it more aggressive. Instead, he pulled out his medical kit and his emergency rations. The next hour tested everyone's patience. Daniel moved in a wide circle around the ravager's territory, occasionally stopping to leave small portions of his rations on rocks or fallen logs. Not a trail leading to him, but offerings scattered throughout the area, food given freely, with no demands attached. Grath growled in frustration from the observation room. This is foolish. He should be hunting the creature, not feeding it. Perhaps, Vren said quietly. Or perhaps he understands something about predators that you do not. Daniel finally found the ravager's den, a natural depression beneath a massive root system that provided shelter and concealment. He could smell the creature from 30 meters away, a mix of musk and blood that told him the ravager was definitely inside and definitely injured. He didn't approach the den directly. Instead, he settled down against a tree about 40 meters away, in a spot where he had clear line of sight to the entrance, but was far enough away to seem non-threatening. Then he simply sat and waited. An hour passed, then two. Daniel didn't move except to occasionally shift his weight and drink water. He kept his hands visible and empty, making no threatening gestures. His breathing was slow and steady, the pattern that humans used when they wanted to stay calm and appear harmless. The students watching grew restless. Sharp Sense hissed in frustration. "He is doing nothing. This is a waste of time." "He is doing everything necessary," Vren corrected. "He is showing the Ravager that he is not a threat." 3 hours into Daniel's exam, the den entrance showed movement. 2 eyes reflected in the dim light watching the human who sat so still and quiet. Daniel saw the eyes but didn't react. He didn't stare directly at them, didn't move toward them, didn't make any gesture that could be interpreted as aggressive. Instead, he very slowly reached into his pack and pulled out one of his rations. He unwrapped it deliberately, letting the smell carry on the slight breeze, and took a small bite. Then he placed the rest of the ration on the ground in front of him and scooted backward a few meters, leaving the food between himself and the Ravager. The eyes disappeared back into the den. Daniel waited. 15 minutes later, the eyes returned. This time they came with a body. The Ravager emerged slowly from its den, every muscle tense and ready to fight or flee. It was smaller than Daniel had expected, maybe 2 meters long, with scales that shifted colors to blend with the jungle. Beautiful and dangerous. Daniel noticed the damaged paw immediately. The Ravager was favoring its left front leg, holding it at an angle that kept weight off the injured claw. The limping predator approached the food Daniel had left, sniffed it carefully, and then swallowed it in one quick gulp. Daniel stayed perfectly still. The Ravager stared at him for a long moment, then retreated back to its den with the same cautious movements. "Progress," Daniel whispered. He repeated the process. Food offered, distance maintained, patience exercised. The Ravager came out twice more over the next hour, each time getting slightly closer before retreating. The fourth time, it didn't retreat immediately after eating. Instead, it sat down about 10 meters from Daniel and watched him. Daniel began talking, his voice soft and low. "That paw looks bad. Probably hurts to walk on it. Makes you cranky, doesn't it? I understand. I broke my ankle once tracking a grizzly bear. Made me cranky too." The Ravager's head tilted slightly, processing the strange sounds. The translator embedded in the habitat ceiling converted Daniel's words into basic concepts that any intelligent creature could understand, though the tone carried meaning beyond the words. "You've had a rough day. 7 students barging into your space, all of them trying to fight you. Nobody asked if you were okay. Nobody checked if you needed help." Daniel slowly reached into his pack again, this time pulling out his medical scanner. "I can help with that paw if you'll let me, but that's your choice." The Ravager made a sound between a growl and a whimper, pain and uncertainty mixed together. Daniel held up the scanner where the creature could see it, then very slowly activated it. The device hummed softly and projected a harmless light beam. He scanned his own hand first, demonstrating that the tool didn't cause pain, then held it steady and waited. The Ravager stood up, took one hesitant step forward, then another. It was close enough now that Daniel could have reached out and touched it. Close enough that one swipe of those claws could have ended the exam permanently. Daniel activated his communication link to the observation room. Vren's voice came through immediately. "Cadet Brooks, report your status." "I'm fine, sir. But I need clarification on the exam parameters." "Proceed." Daniel kept his eyes on the Ravager, his voice steady and calm. "Do you want it alive or in pieces? Because I can do either one, but one of those options is cruel and unnecessary." "Your choice, sir." The observation room went completely silent. Pellis's skin flashed bright orange shock. Grath's jaw hung open. Quick Claw's blades extended unconsciously in surprise. Vren's mandibles clicked several times before he responded. "Explain your question, Cadet." "This creature is injured and scared. 7 students tried to force it into submission through violence. I can continue that pattern, and probably succeed with enough tranquilizer darts and tactical advantage. Or I can treat the injury, show the Ravager that not everyone is a threat, and achieve actual neutralization through cooperation." The exam said neutralize, not dominate. "So which result do you want?" A long pause followed. Finally, Vren spoke. "The exam parameters allow for any method that achieves safe neutralization. Proceed as you see fit, Cadet Brooks. Daniel smiled slightly. Thank you, sir. Brooks out. He turned his full attention back to the Ravager, which had been watching this entire exchange with intelligent eyes. Okay, friend. Let's take a look at that paw. I promise this won't hurt any more than it already does. The Ravager took one more step forward, lowering its head in a gesture that wasn't quite submission but definitely wasn't aggression. Daniel reached out slowly, palm up, offering connection instead of demanding it. The Ravager's breath was hot against Daniel's extended hand. For several heartbeats, nothing happened. The Predator's eyes studied the human, calculating risk and reward in ways that millions of years of evolution had programmed into its bioengineered brain. Then, slowly, the Ravager pressed its snout against Daniel's palm. Not aggressive, not playful, just simple contact. Acknowledgement. Good, Daniel breathed. That's good. Now let me see that paw. He moved with the same deliberate slowness that had defined his entire approach. Every motion was telegraphed, predictable, non-threatening. He shifted his position to get a better angle on the injured limb, and the Ravager tracked his movement but didn't retreat. The medical scanner showed what Daniel had suspected. The claw wasn't just damaged, it was infected. The fight with Quick Claw had driven dirt and bacteria deep into the tissue. Without treatment, the infection would spread. The Ravager wasn't just defending its territory, it was in constant pain. This is going to sting, Daniel warned, pulling out an antiseptic applicator from his medical kit. But it'll feel better afterward. Trust me. Trust. What a strange concept to apply to a bioengineered predator in the middle of an exam. But Daniel had learned long ago that trust wasn't exclusive to humans or even to naturally evolved species. Anything with enough intelligence to feel pain could also understand relief. He applied the antiseptic in quick, efficient movements. The Ravager growled, a low rumble that vibrated through the jungle floor, but it didn't pull away. Its muscles tensed, ready to strike, but the strike never came. I know. Daniel kept talking, his voice a steady anchor of calm. It hurts now, but that's the medicine killing the infection. Just a few more seconds. Back in the observation room, Pellis's skin had shifted from shocked orange to fascinated green. This is unprecedented. The creature should have attacked by now. Vren's four eyes remained fixed on the screen. The human has established himself as a healer, not a threat. The Ravager recognizes the difference. Impossible, Sharpsense insisted. It is a predator. It does not understand such concepts. Then explain what we are watching, Vren replied simply. Daniel finished cleaning the wound and moved to the next step. He pulled out a regenerative bandage, the kind that would stimulate tissue repair and prevent further infection. Applying it required actually touching the injured paw, holding it steady while the bandage sealed itself around the wound. Okay. Friend, this is the part where you really have to trust me, Daniel said, reaching for the paw. I need to hold this still for about 10 seconds while the bandage sets. Can you do that for me? The Ravager's eyes narrowed. Its free claws flexed, gouging small furrows in the dirt. Every instinct the creature had probably screamed at it to run or fight, to not let this strange, soft being hold its injured limb. Daniel waited, hand extended but not grabbing. Offering, not taking, the Ravager made a decision. It lifted its injured paw slightly, a gesture of permission that made several students gasp in the observation room. Daniel gently took the paw in both hands. The scales were warm and surprisingly smooth. He could feel the tension in the limb, the way the Ravager was ready to yank it back at any sign of danger. But Daniel just held it steady, applied the bandage, and counted to 10. 1, 2, 3, he counted out loud, partly to track time and partly to maintain the vocal connection. 4, 5, 6. Almost done. 7, 8, 9, 10. There we go. All finished. He released the paw immediately, not holding on a moment longer than necessary, respecting boundaries. The Ravager pulled its limb back, examined the bandage with clear suspicion, then gingerly put weight on it. The pain relief must have been immediate and obvious. The Ravager's entire posture changed. The defensive tension melted away, replaced by something that looked almost like surprise. It took a few experimental steps, testing the injured paw, and for the first time since Daniel had entered the habitat, the creature moved without limping. Feels better, doesn't it? Daniel smiled. Modern medicine is pretty amazing. The Ravager sat down, not in a defensive crouch but in something closer to a relaxed position. It studied Daniel with what could only be described as curiosity. This strange, weak-looking creature had entered the territory where 7 others had attacked, and instead of fighting, it had taken away pain. Daniel pulled out another ration and tossed it gently to the Ravager. The creature caught it mid-air, a display of reflexes that reminded everyone watching that despite the moment of peace, this was still a dangerous predator. "I need to take you to the extraction point," Daniel said conversationally. "The vets will want to check that paw in a few days, make sure the infection is completely gone. But that means you need to come with me." "What do you think?" The Ravager tilted its head, processing. The translator was converting Daniel's words, but more than that, the creature was reading his body language, his tone, his intentions. All predators were experts at reading prey, but the Ravager was learning that this human wasn't prey at all. He was something else entirely. Daniel stood up slowly, brushing dirt off his pants. He looked toward the habitat exit, nearly 2 kilometers away through dense jungle. Then he looked back at the Ravager. "Come on," he said simply, and started walking. For a moment, nothing happened. Daniel kept walking, not looking back, not demanding, just offering an invitation. Then he heard it. The soft sound of claws on soil. The Ravager was following him. The observation room erupted in chaos. Students from a dozen species all tried to talk at once, their voices overlapping in confusion and disbelief. "Impossible. What sorcery is this?" "The creature is following him like a trained animal." Vren raised his upper right arm and silence fell immediately. The instructor's mandibles clicked in a pattern that his students had learned meant he was either very pleased or very concerned. "Possibly both, Cadet Grath," Vren said quietly. "What was your approach to this exam?" Grath shifted uncomfortably. "I attempted to overpower the creature using my natural advantages, sir." "And you, Quickclaw?" "I used speed and precision to strike before the beast could react, sir." "Both valid tactical approaches," Vren acknowledged. "Both failed. Do you understand why?" The 2 students exchanged glances but said nothing. Vren gestured at the screen where Daniel was now walking casually through the jungle with an apex predator trailing behind him like a loyal hound. Human Cadet Brooks did not attempt to overcome the Ravager. He attempted to understand it. He assessed the true situation, identified the actual problem, and solved it. The creature was not an enemy to be defeated. It was an injured animal to be helped. "But sir," Sharpsense protested, "the exam was to neutralize the threat." "And is the threat neutralized?" Vren asked. On the screen, Daniel and the Ravager emerged from a thick section of jungle. The extraction point was visible in the distance, a cleared area with medical equipment and handlers waiting nervously. "The threat is more than neutralized," Vren continued. "The human has created an ally from an enemy. That is a skill worth more than any amount of strength or speed." Daniel reached the extraction point and turned to face the Ravager. The creature had stopped at the edge of the clearing, uncertain about the open space and the new smells of unfamiliar beings. "It's okay," Daniel said gently. "These people are going to help take care of you. They're good at what they do." The veterinary team leader, a nervous Felsen named Dr. Roll, approached cautiously. "Cadet Brooks, we need to get the creature into the containment area for examination." "He doesn't need containment," Daniel replied. "He needs treatment and rest. The containment will just stress him out. But protocol requires—" "Your protocol didn't account for a cooperative patient," Daniel interrupted politely but firmly. "Let me introduce you properly and he'll be fine." What happened next became the stuff of Academy legend. Daniel spent 10 minutes introducing the Ravager to Dr. Roll and the veterinary team, one person at a time. He explained in simple terms what each person would do, demonstrating with his own body when necessary. And the Ravager, a creature that had injured 2 trained combat students just hours ago, allowed itself to be examined and treated without a single aggressive move. When the medical check was complete and the Ravager was settled in a comfortable recovery area, Daniel removed his exam badge and handed it to a handler. "Tell Instructor Vren I passed," he said, exhaustion finally showing in his voice. "I'll be in the common area if he needs me. I really need some coffee." He walked away without fanfare, leaving behind a group of veterinarians who were still processing what they had just witnessed, and a Ravager who watched the human leave with something very close to gratitude in its eyes. The Academy common area served food and drinks from 40 different worlds, but Daniel had convinced the kitchen staff to stock actual Earth coffee 3 months ago. It cost him 2 weeks of volunteer work in the recycling center. But sitting here now with a steaming cup of the real thing made it absolutely worth it. Other students kept their distance, watching him with a mix of respect, confusion, and suspicion. Word of his exam performance had spread through the academy faster than a hull breach alarm. The human who had turned a combat exam into a medical consultation. The prey species who had made an apex predator follow him like a pet. Grath was the first to approach. The massive Turok moved carefully, each step deliberate as if approaching something dangerous. He stopped a few feet from Daniel's table and stood there, clearly struggling with words. "Sit down if you want," Daniel said without looking up from his coffee. "Standing there like that makes you look constipated." Grath sat, the chair groaning under his armored bulk. "I do not understand what you did in the habitat." "I know you don't. Most people here wouldn't. Explain it to me." Daniel took a long sip of coffee before answering. "Where I'm from, we had these predators called wolves. Dangerous, smart, hunted in packs. Our ancestors could have fought them, tried to wipe them out. Some people did, but others tried something different. They offered food, showed they weren't a threat, and slowly built trust. Over thousands of years, wolves became dogs. Our best friends, our partners. But the Ravager is not a wolf, no, but the principle is the same. Every predator, every dangerous thing has needs and fears. If you only see them as enemies, you only have one option, which is to fight. But if you see them as beings with problems you might be able to solve, you get more options." Grath processed this, his scaled brow furrowing. "My people value strength above all else. We prove ourselves through combat. And that works great until you meet something you can't beat with strength alone." Daniel finally looked at the Turok. "Then what?" The question hung in the air. Quickclaw had been listening from a nearby table and now moved closer, her feline grace making no sound. "The human has a point," she said, sitting down without asking. "I am the fastest in this academy class. My reaction time is 3 times faster than any other species here. Yet I failed the exam because speed alone was not enough. Because the Ravager wasn't the real problem," Daniel explained. "The injury was the problem. The fear was the problem. The fact that 7 students had already attacked it was the problem. The actual creature was just responding to those problems in the only way it knew how." Sharp Sense joined the growing group, his large ears twitching with curiosity. "You speak as if the beast thinks like we do." "Not exactly like we do, but yeah, it thinks. It feels pain. It gets scared. It makes decisions based on past experience. That's all thinking," Daniel shrugged. "We spent so long assuming we were the only ones who mattered that we forgot everything else has an inner life too." "This is a very strange philosophy," Grath rumbled. "Maybe, but it works." The conversation was interrupted by Instructor Vren entering the common area. His presence immediately commanded attention. Every student stood except Daniel, who just raised his coffee cup in a casual salute. "Cadet Brooks, walk with me." Daniel drained the last of his coffee and followed Vren out into the corridor. They walked in silence for several minutes, passing through sections of the academy that grew progressively quieter and more official-looking. Vren's office was exactly what Daniel expected. Walls covered with commendations, weapons from a dozen worlds, tactical displays showing historical battles. The workspace of someone who had spent their entire life in military service. "Sit," Vren commanded, gesturing to a chair that seemed designed for someone with a very different anatomy than humans. Daniel sat anyway, adjusting his position to something stable if not comfortable. Vren pulled up holoscreen displays showing footage from Daniel's exam. Every moment was captured in high definition. The tracking, the waiting, the medical treatment, and finally the unprecedented sight of the Ravager following him to extraction. "In 30 years of teaching tactical combat," Vren began, "I have administered this exam to over 400 students. 6 of them achieved perfect scores by traditional metrics, which is speed, efficiency, and clean capture. You achieved something I have never seen. You eliminated the conflict entirely. Is that a good thing or a bad thing, sir?" Vren's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "That is what I am still determining. You did not follow any established doctrine. You abandoned defensive positions, approached the threat without weapons ready, and spent more time treating the creature than subduing it. By every standard tactical measure, your approach should have resulted in failure or injury. But it didn't. No, it resulted in the most peaceful resolution of this exam in Academy history." Vren leaned back in his chair, all four arms gesturing in a way that indicated complex thought. The question is whether your success was due to a reproducible skill set or simply unprecedented luck. Luck had nothing to do with it, sir. Every decision I made was based on observation and analysis. The Ravager was injured. Injured animals are defensive. Defensive animals attack when threatened, but cooperate with helpers. I chose to be a helper instead of a threat. Basic field biology. Basic field biology, Vren repeated slowly. Something we do not teach in our tactical curriculum. Maybe you should. The bluntness of that statement would have gotten most cadets disciplined, but Vren simply studied Daniel with his four unblinking eyes. You are aware that your performance is being reviewed by senior military officials? I figured it might be. I did ask you if you wanted the Ravager alive or in pieces. That probably got some attention. Indeed, Fleet Commander Torvik has expressed particular interest. He is of the Dreth species. They value combat prowess above all other traits. I've heard of them. Very strong, very proud. Very skeptical of your methods, Vren clarified. He believes your success was an anomaly, that a truly dangerous predator would not respond to your approach. Daniel felt a cold knot form in his stomach, and he wants to test that theory. He will arrive at the academy in 3 days. He is bringing a Siege-class Ravager, a creature twice the size of the exam specimen. It was captured after destroying a mining colony and has killed several soldiers. Commander Torvik wants you to demonstrate your methods on something that cannot be pacified. So this is a challenge. Yes, and refusing would damage both your reputation and the perception of human capabilities. In the galactic military, Vren leaned forward. I cannot order you to accept this challenge. It is far beyond the parameters of any student exam and poses legitimate danger to your life, but I will support whatever decision you make. Daniel thought about the Ravager he had helped today, the way it had looked at him after the pain disappeared, the way it had chosen to follow him instead of fleeing or fighting. Every predator, every dangerous thing was just trying to survive in the way it knew how. Tell Commander Torvik I accept his challenge, Daniel said. But I need 2 days with the Siege class before any demonstration. Alone, uninterrupted, and I need access to its capture records and medical history. That is a significant demand. That's my price. 2 days to assess the situation properly, or I walk away now and he can believe whatever he wants. Vren's mandibles clicked again, definitely amused this time. You bargain like someone who knows their value. Very well. I will relay your conditions to Commander Torvik. Thank you, sir. Daniel stood to leave, then paused. Can I ask you something? Proceed. Why are you supporting this? You're a career military officer. My methods go against everything you've probably spent your life believing. Vren was quiet for a long moment. Because I have spent my life in military service, I have seen countless battles. I have won victories and suffered defeats, and I have learned that the greatest warriors are not those who win every fight. He met Daniel's eyes directly. The greatest warriors are those who find ways to avoid fighting in the first place. If your methods can teach that skill, they are worth more than 1,000 conventional victories. Daniel nodded slowly, understanding. I'll do my best not to disappoint you, sir. You already have not. Now go. Rest. You have 3 days to prepare for something that may be impossible. Impossible just means nobody's figured it out yet, Daniel replied, and left the office. He returned to his quarters, his mind already working through strategies. A Siege-class Ravager that had killed soldiers. That had destroyed a colony. That was probably in constant pain from capture and confinement. It wasn't impossible. It was just a bigger problem that needed a bigger solution. Daniel pulled up research files on his personal terminal and started reading. He had 3 days to learn everything possible about Siege-class Ravagers, their psychology, their behavior, their needs. 3 days to figure out how to help something that everyone else had given up on. It was going to be a long 3 days. Fleet Commander Torvik arrived exactly on schedule with an entourage that included 6 armed guards, 2 xenobiologists, and enough ceremonial military decoration to outfit a small army. His Dreth physiology was impressive, nearly 3 meters, of dense muscle and natural armor plating that had evolved on a high-gravity world where everything tried to kill everything else. Daniel met them at the main docking port wearing his standard academy uniform and carrying nothing but a datapad with his research notes. The contrast was almost comical. You are the human who believes predators can be pacified. Torvik said. It was not a question, and his tone made it clear he considered the idea ridiculous. I'm the human who believes most conflicts have solutions beyond violence. Daniel replied evenly. Not quite the same thing. A distinction without meaning. Torvik gestured to his guards. I have brought a siege-class Ravager, designation SC-779. It destroyed mining colony outpost Deneb 4, killed 17 soldiers during capture, and has injured 6 handlers since containment. Your instructor claims you can neutralize such a creature using your methods. I said I'd try. Big difference between claiming I can and saying I'll attempt it. Torvik's eyes narrowed. You fear failure. I respect the possibility of it. That's called being smart, not scared. A tense silence followed. Torvik's guards shifted slightly, ready for conflict. But then something unexpected happened. Torvik laughed, a deep rumbling sound that echoed through the docking bay. Perhaps you are not as soft as you appear, human. Very well. Present your demands. 2 days alone with SC-779. No interruptions, no handlers, no guards. Just me and the Ravager. I'll also need full access to its capture records, medical history, and behavioral assessments. And the containment area needs to be modified. Modified how? Less like a prison, more like a habitat. Proper temperature, appropriate space, environmental enrichment. And I need the observation feeds disabled. The creature needs to know it's not being watched every second. Absolutely not. One of the xenobiologists interrupted. The safety protocols require constant monitoring. Your safety protocols are part of why it's so aggressive, Daniel countered. Constant observation means constant stress. Stress means defensive behavior. Defensive behavior means violence. You're creating the problem you're trying to contain. Torvik raised a hand, silencing his staff. You claim you can succeed where trained soldiers failed, where experts failed, where every conventional approach failed. I claim I can try a different approach. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. But doing the same thing that already failed seems pointless. And if it kills you, then you get to say you were right and human methods don't work. Seems like you win either way. Torvik studied Daniel for a long moment. The human showed no bravado, no false confidence, just calm acceptance of the risks involved. It was a warrior's mindset in a scholar's body. 2 days, Torvik agreed, but the observation feeds remain active. We will not watch actively, but the recordings must exist for safety and research purposes. Fair enough. Daniel extended his hand, the human gesture for agreement. Torvik looked at it with confusion until one of his aides explained. The commander gripped Daniel's hand with surprising gentleness, clearly aware that human bones were significantly more fragile than Dreth ones. The containment facility was exactly what Daniel expected. Sterile, cold, efficient, everything designed to hold a dangerous creature with maximum security and minimum consideration for the creature's well-being. C-779 occupied a reinforced cell that was technically large enough for its size, but provided no environmental enrichment, no comfort, and no privacy. Daniel spent the first 6 hours just watching through the observation window. The Siege class. Ravager was massive, easily twice the size of the exam specimen. Its scales were darker, scarred from combat and capture. It paced constantly, a repetitive pattern that indicated severe stress and boredom. But there was something else. Every third or fourth step, the Ravager favored its right side. An old injury, poorly healed. Daniel made notes. He accessed the capture records and found what he suspected. SC-779 had not attacked the mining colony unprovoked. The miners had set up equipment directly on top of what turned out to be a nesting site. The Ravager had been protecting eggs. The soldiers who captured it had destroyed those eggs as a safety measure. Of course you're aggressive, Daniel muttered to himself. They killed your children. The behavioral assessments were useless. Subject displays extreme aggression. Subject refuses all pacification attempts. Subject appears to lack capacity for positive conditioning. Every assessment blamed the creature for responding predictably to trauma and loss. Daniel spent the rest of the first day implementing his modifications. He had the temperature increased to match SC-779's native environment. He introduced proper substrate, allowing the Ravager to dig and create dens. He added environmental complexity, structures to explore, and territory to claim. The handlers thought he was insane. "You're making it more comfortable. That will make it more aggressive, more territorial." Wrong. Comfort reduces stress. Stress causes aggression. Basic animal psychology. He also had them remove the bright overhead lights, replacing them with a day-night cycle that matched the Ravager's circadian rhythms. The constant bright lights had been preventing the creature from sleeping properly, adding exhaustion to an already stressed animal. By the end of day 1, SC-779's pacing had slowed slightly. The changes weren't dramatic, but they were present. The Ravager had created a den in one corner and had actually slept for 3 hours, the longest uninterrupted rest since its capture. Day 2 began with Daniel entering the containment area. No weapons, no armor, just medical supplies and food. The same approach that had worked before, but scaled up for something much larger and much more traumatized. SC-779 reacted immediately, charging toward the entrance with a roar that made Daniel's bones vibrate. But Daniel had expected this. He didn't run, didn't threaten, just stood still and waited. The Ravager stopped 3 meters away, claws extended, teeth bared. Ready to kill. Daniel sat down, making himself smaller and less threatening. "I know, you're angry. You have every right to be. They killed your eggs. They hurt you. They locked you in a box and expected you to be grateful." The Ravager's roar softened to a growl. Confusion mixed with rage. "I can't bring back what you lost," Daniel continued, his voice steady and low. "Nothing I do will fix that. But I can help with the pain you're in right now. That old injury on your right side, the one that makes you limp. I can treat that. If you'll let me." He pulled out the medical scanner, showing it to the creature the same way he had with the smaller Ravager. Demonstrating on himself first, proving it caused no pain. SC-779 watched, intelligence clear in its eyes. Calculating. Evaluating. This was not like the others who had entered its space. Those had come with weapons, with fear, with aggression. This one came with strange tools and calm words. Daniel spent 6 hours in that cell on day 2, never getting closer than 3 meters, but never leaving either. He talked constantly, explaining what he was doing, why he was there, what he wanted to help with. The translator converted his words, but more importantly, his tone and body language conveyed non-threat. By hour 8, SC-779 had lain down. Not sleeping, still watching, but no longer in an aggressive posture. Progress. Daniel left food and water within reach and exited the cell. "Good first day," he said to the observation room, knowing Torvik and his people were watching despite their promise not to actively monitor. Day 3 should be interesting. Day 3, Daniel entered earlier. SC-779 was waiting but didn't charge. The Ravager had eaten the food left yesterday, another positive sign. "Morning," Daniel greeted, sitting in his usual spot. "Sleep okay? The temperature better now?" He pulled out his medical equipment and began the same demonstration as yesterday, showing the scanner, using it on himself, placing it where SC-779 could investigate if it chose. What happened next would be studied by xenobiologists for years. SC-779 stood up, walked slowly to where Daniel sat, and lowered its massive head to sniff the medical scanner. Daniel's heart pounded, but he kept his breathing steady. The Ravager's breath was hot and smelled of meat, its teeth close enough to remove Daniel's head with one snap. But the snap didn't come. Instead, SC-779 made a sound, low and questioning. "A request, not a threat." "Yeah," Daniel answered. "I can help. Let me see that right side." The Siege-class Ravager, the creature that had killed soldiers and destroyed a mining facility, lay down and exposed its injured side to the human who had asked for permission first. Daniel worked quickly and efficiently. The injury was old, a deep tissue trauma that had healed incorrectly. Scar tissue had formed around damaged muscle, causing constant pain. He used a regenerative treatment that would break down the scar tissue and allow proper healing. This is going to hurt for a few days while it heals right, Daniel explained. But after that, no more pain. You'll move better, feel better. SC-779 made a sound that was not quite a purr, not quite a growl. Acknowledgement. Daniel spent the next 10 hours with the Ravager, sometimes treating injuries, sometimes just sitting in comfortable silence. By the end of day 3, he could approach within arm's reach without any defensive response. When the cell door opened and Daniel emerged, Torvik was waiting. The fleet commander's expression was unreadable. "Impossible," Torvik said flatly. "Possible," Daniel corrected. "Just not the way you expected." The creature that killed my soldiers was protecting its nest. It was defending its children from what it perceived as invaders. That doesn't make it evil or impossible to reach. It makes it apparent. Torvik was silent for a long moment. "You will demonstrate this for my staff tomorrow?" "No," Daniel said firmly, "but you can observe through the feeds. SC-779 has had enough of being forced to perform for an audience." For the second time, Torvik laughed. "You dictate terms to a fleet commander. I respect a creature that's been through hell. That's not negotiable." 1 week after the demonstration with SC-779, Daniel found himself teaching a seminar to a mixed group of students and junior officers. The room was packed beyond capacity, with attendees from species he had never even seen before, all wanting to learn about the human's methods. "Nonviolent neutralization isn't about being weak or passive," Daniel explained, gesturing at footage from both his exam and his work with SC-779. "It's about reading the situation correctly and responding to the actual problem instead of the perceived threat." A young Felson raised her paw. "But what if the creature truly is just aggressive by nature? Not all violence comes from pain or fear." "True," Daniel acknowledged. "Some species are naturally more aggressive. But even then, aggression usually serves a purpose. Territory defense, resource competition, establishing hierarchy. If you understand the purpose, you can usually find an alternative solution." Grath, who had been attending every one of Daniel's sessions, spoke up from the back. "The human makes it sound simple, but most of us cannot read predators the way he does. We do not have this skill." "That's not true. You can all learn it. You just need to start seeing other creatures as intelligent beings with motivations instead of threats to be eliminated." Daniel pulled up a new slide showing basic body language indicators. "Start here. Learn what different postures mean. Learn what sounds indicate stress versus aggression. It's not magic. It's observation and practice." The seminar lasted 3 hours, and by the end, Daniel's voice was getting hoarse. He dismissed the group and was packing up his materials when Vren approached with another figure. Fleet Commander Torvik looked slightly uncomfortable, which on a 3-meter-tall armored warrior was quite a sight. "Cadet Brooks," Torvik began formally, "I have spent the last week reviewing the footage of your work with SC-779. I have also consulted with xenobiologists, combat specialists, and my own command staff." "And?" Daniel asked, already suspecting where this was going. "I was wrong." The words came out with difficulty but with genuine sincerity. "The methods I have relied upon for my entire career are effective for defeating enemies, but they are useless for creating understanding. You achieved in 3 days what months of conventional approaches failed to accomplish." "The conventional approaches were the problem," Daniel said gently. SC-779 wasn't the enemy. The situation was the enemy. Torvik's posture shifted, a gesture of respect in Dreth body language. "I am commissioning a formal study of your techniques. With your permission, I would like to document your methods for distribution to fleet tactical training programs." Daniel considered this carefully. "On one condition, the documentation must emphasize that these methods require patience and genuine empathy. They can't be rushed or faked. If commanders try to use them as just another tactical trick without actually caring about the creatures they're dealing with, it won't work." "Agreed. I will ensure that requirement is explicit in all training materials." After Torvik left, Vren placed one of his 4 hands on Daniel's shoulder. You have accomplished something remarkable. You have changed minds that I thought were unchangeable. I just showed them a different option, Daniel replied. People change their minds when they see proof that another way works better. There is more news, Vren continued. SC-779 has been approved for relocation to a proper sanctuary world. It will never be used for security or military purposes again. Thanks to your intervention, it will live out its life in peace. Daniel felt a weight lift from his chest that he hadn't realized he was carrying. That's good. That's really good. And the Ravager from your exam has been reassigned as well. It is now working as a therapy animal for soldiers recovering from trauma. Apparently, having a once dangerous predator that is now calm and gentle helps them process their own experiences. Makes sense. If something that scary can find peace, maybe they can too. 3 days later, Daniel was summoned to the Academy Administration Building. He expected another meeting, another demonstration, another attempt to quantify what he did into steps that could be taught by manual. Instead, he found Vren, Pellis, and a holographic projection of the Academy Board of Directors. Cadet Daniel Brooks, the board chair began, her three-toned voice harmonizing in the way her species communicated. Your performance in the Predator Tactics examination and your subsequent work with SC-779 has prompted this review. You have demonstrated tactical thinking that surpasses standard curriculum and achieved results that challenge our fundamental understanding of threat neutralization. Daniel waited, unsure where this was going. Effective immediately. You are being promoted to assistant instructor with a specialty in alternative tactical approaches. You will continue your own studies while teaching others your methods. This is an unprecedented appointment for a student who has not yet graduated. I appreciate the offer, Daniel said carefully. But I'm not sure I'm qualified to be an instructor. I still have a lot to learn. That awareness is precisely why you are qualified, Vren interjected. The best teachers are those who remember being students. Daniel accepted the position because refusing felt wrong. Not wrong for his career, but wrong for the larger goal. If his methods could help even a few people approach conflict differently, it was worth the discomfort of being thrust into a teaching role. 2 months later, the common area had become a regular gathering spot for an unusual group. Grath, Quickclaw, Sharpsense, and a rotating cast of other students who had initially mocked Daniel now studied under him. The conversations had evolved from simple questions to complex discussions about philosophy, psychology, and the nature of intelligence itself. I received a message from my homeworld, Grath announced one evening. My Pride clan wants me to return and share these human methods. They believe it could change how we approach the predators on our world. That's great, Daniel said, genuinely pleased. Just remember, it's not about making them submit. It's about finding mutual understanding. I understand now, though I must admit explaining to my clan that a human taught me about predators will be entertaining. We thought we were the predators. Quickclaw's whiskers twitched in amusement. We all thought we were the predators. Then the human arrived and showed us we were just beings with claws. Daniel's communicator chimed with a priority message. He checked it and felt his eyebrows rise. Problem? Vren asked, having just arrived with his own drink. Not exactly. SC-779's sanctuary handlers are reporting something unexpected. The Ravager has been displaying nesting behavior again. They think it might be preparing to lay another clutch of eggs. That is remarkable. Vren's mandibles clicked. Siege-class Ravagers rarely breed in captivity. The stress typically prevents reproductive behavior entirely. Well, this one feels safe enough now, apparently. Daniel smiled. They want to know if I can come consult on proper nesting habitat construction. Make sure we don't mess it up this time. Will you go? Of course. SC-779 deserves to be a parent again. Besides, imagine what we could learn from observing healthy siege class development in a safe environment. As the evening wore on and the common area gradually emptied, Daniel found himself alone with his thoughts and his coffee. He pulled up his personal log and began recording. It's been 4 months since that exam. 4 months since I asked Vren if he wanted the Ravager alive or in pieces. I think that question changed more than just my life. It changed how people here think about problems and solutions. He paused, collecting his thoughts. Back on Earth, we spent thousands of years learning that cooperation beats domination in the long run. We made wolves into dogs, wildcats into pets, horses into partners. Not by breaking them, but by offering something better than conflict. The galaxy forgot that lesson, or maybe never learned it in the first place. Another sip of coffee, now cold but still comforting. They're calling my methods revolutionary, but they're not. They're just basic empathy applied to situations where everyone else chose violence. That's not revolutionary. That's just remembering that everything with a nervous system wants basically the same things: safety, comfort, freedom from pain. A chime indicated someone entering the common area. Daniel looked up to see a first-year student, a small Thenic who barely came up to his waist. "Excuse me, Instructor Brooks, I heard you're teaching advanced methods next semester. Can anyone join, or is it only for combat students?" "Anyone can join who wants to learn," Daniel replied. "What's your field of study?" "Xenobiology. I want to work with dangerous species in their natural habitats, but everyone says I'm too small, too weak for field work." Daniel smiled, remembering similar comments directed at him. "Sit down. Let me tell you something about predators and the people who work with them. It's not about being stronger or bigger. It's about being smarter and more patient." The student sat, pulling out a datapad to take notes. "The most dangerous predator I ever faced wasn't the Siege-class Ravager that killed 17 soldiers. It was a grizzly bear back on Earth when I was doing wildlife surveys. 800 pounds of muscle and claws, and I had just walked between her and her cubs by accident." "What did you do?" "I made myself small, avoided eye contact, and backed away slowly while talking in a calm voice. She was scared for her cubs, not actually aggressive. Once she understood I wasn't a threat, she let me leave. Same principle as everything else. Understand the motivation, respond to the real problem, and most conflicts resolve themselves." They talked for over an hour, and when the student finally left, Daniel felt that familiar sense of purpose that came with teaching. This was why he accepted the instructor position. Not for the prestige or the career advancement, but for moments like this where he could help someone see possibilities instead of just obstacles. His communicator chimed again. This time it was a personal message from Dr. Raoul, the veterinarian who had been so nervous about approaching the original Ravager. "Cadet, or should I say Instructor Brooks, wanted you to know that your Ravager, the one from your exam, assisted in calming down an aggressive patient today, a wounded soldier who has been violent with staff." The Ravager approached him, let him pet it, and the soldier calmed immediately. "I never thought I would see a predator as a therapeutic tool. Thank you for teaching us to see differently." Daniel saved the message and looked out the viewport at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was full of species who thought strength and violence were the only paths to success. But slowly, one person at a time, one predator at a time, that was changing. He raised his coffee cup in a solitary toast. "To the predators who taught us we didn't need to fight, and to the humans who remembered we were never apex because of our strength." Outside, SC-779 was preparing a nest for eggs that would hatch into a generation of Siege-class Ravagers who would never know the trauma of conflict, who would learn from birth that some beings could be trusted, and in classrooms across the academy, students from a dozen species were learning that the greatest victories weren't won with claws or weapons, but with patience and understanding. The humans' quiet revolution continued.